Looking for a guaranteed way to create content that resonates with your audience? Start a podcast, interview your ideal clients, and let them choose the topic of the interview. Because if your ideal clients care about the topic, there's a good chance the rest of your audience will care about it too. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm your host for today's episode, Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. I am joined today by Sahil Mansuri. He is the CEO of Bravado. Sahil, how you doing today, man? I'm
doing great, man. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. I am so pumped about having you on the show today. I heard you recently on Outreach's new podcast, the Sales Engagement Podcast. If anybody isn't listening to that show, by the way, go over and subscribe. They are putting out some phenomenal content on sales engagement and B2B sales in general. But I heard you talking about sales as a noble profession and talking about personal brands of B2B salespeople. And we're going to be breaking down today, one, why sellers need a personal brand, and two, how they can go about building it very strategically. Before we jump into that, Sahil, for folks unlike myself who aren't familiar with you, give us a little bit about your background and what you and the team at Bravado are up to these days, man.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm lucky to work on a project called Bravado, which is kind of a mission-driven organization to change the perception of sales and salespeople worldwide. So what we do here at Bravado is champion the individual seller, fight against the stigma of sales as being, untrustworthy or a bunch of hustlers or people who are really pushy, and instead try to steward in the era of the modern seller, the technical salesperson, the consultative salesperson, the salesperson that a customer actually wants to do business with, and help those people build their brand as someone that customers trust.
I love it. So that segues so nicely, because that is what we're going to be talking about today is, the why and the how of transforming yourself as a seller. So tell me a little bit about, I know you're so passionate about this subject, Sahil. Why is it important for sellers to invest in their personal brand and build a brand these days, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's the confluence of two things. So first of all, buyers are tired. Right. I think that it's very clear if you look at cold call reply rates, cold email reply rates, the efficacy of sending emails on LinkedIn, just reaching out and being inundated with outreach has led to extreme fatigue from buyers. And quite frankly, platform parity is a thing. They're not interested in your newest bell and whistle. They're not interested in your newest product feature. All this information is kind of available online thanks to G2 Crowd and Trust Radius and Capterra and a bunch of other platforms. So really the onus is on the salesperson to come up with a unique value proposition as to why the buyer would want to engage with them. So I think that's part of it. The other part of it is we're in this world today where everyone kind of relies on online reviews and reputation in order to make decisions. If you think about, we can call this the Yelp phenomena, we can call this the TripAdvisor phenomena, we can call this the Glassdoor phenomena, but the G2 Crowd phenomena. But it's very clear that these days, if you don't have a strong personal brand and a strong reputation online, that there's no chance that you'll be able to cut through the noise. And just as much as we salespeople research buyers before we get on calls with them, so too are buyers researching you, right? I don't think that there's any doubt that we have that before a buyer, takes a meeting with a salesperson, they do their homework and they make sure this is someone that they trust. This is someone they want to do business with. And quite frankly, there isn't much content that salespeople are putting out there to try and honeypot and persuade a buyer to say, yes, I will take 30 minutes of my time to meet with you because I think it's going to be worth it. So that I think is a couple of the reasons why personal brand in sales matters a lot today.
Yeah, absolutely. As you touched on, you're big on this idea of changing the way that we view the sales role, both as individual contributors, as sales leaders. Tell me a little bit about the shift that you see that needs to happen, that is happening to some degree in this, previous mentality of what sales is, what a salesperson does, and where that's shifting to.
Yeah, I mean, the concept of a salesperson, if you close your eyes and you imagine, what is a salesperson? The
Right.
thing that we have perceived, the image that has come to our minds for through Historia has been someone with like slick back hair who like talks a little too smoothly, who is social and somewhat charming and extroverted, and is someone who's extremely dogged and persistent and charming, right? I think that those are probably characteristics. You have snake oil salesperson, you have your used car salesperson, you have like Wolf of Wall Street or Boiler Room or Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross. These are our role models in sales.
Right.
And
those are the cultural references we point to in sales, right?
That's right. Stick to the script, right? Like those sorts of things are the things. Coffee is for closers. Always be closing. Well, no, in today's day and age, no buyer always wants you to be closing, right? Like in today's day and age, I think we can all agree that buyers have more information at their fingertips than ever, and we no longer have control over our sales process. Once upon a time, it was really easy to say, want to know how much this product costs? Contact sales. Well, today I don't need to contact sales to figure out how much this product costs because I can just ask my peers. I can go to G2 Crowd. I can go to Siftery. There's a bunch of resources out there that can tell me about how much I should pay for a product or about how good is this product. I don't need product demos anymore because I can just go read reviews of what other people's experience has been. And so buyers have more control about over the sales process than we salespeople do. And so therefore, there is no urgency, there is no need for a buyer who is interested in learning about a piece of technology to engage with your sales team. And so therefore, they have to choose to engage with your sales team. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is if you are actually creating value for the customer, value for the buyer. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you're an actual expert in your industry. And so these are kind of like dominoes that lead down one very clear path to me, which is the modern salesperson, the salesperson of 2019, the salesperson of 2020 are going to be much more like McKinsey/Bain/BCG consultants than they are like your classic hustler sales ninja, old school slick back salesperson stereotype. It's going to be someone who's deeply technical in their product, someone who has a lot of industry knowledge about not just what their product does, but what their competitors' products do and how their products solve real problems for their customer. Someone who's equally as talented at giving a great sales pitch as is someone who can open up the product, open up your Salesforce instance, open up your tech stack, and be able to actually come up with live solutions on the spot. I think the modern salesperson is going to be someone who's part account executive, part sales engineer. If that is what the modern salesperson is going to be, I think is already today, but is just going to be more and more in the future, then that means that we need to hire a very different type of salesperson than we've hired historically. That means that the role of sales moves away from being a push and moves more into being a pull. And so we see that sales is evolving and changing because buyers are forcing us to change it. It's not because we're like internally like, oh, let's all modernize. It's like, no, we're always doing what the customer tells us to do. And what the customer is telling us today is if you are not creating incredible value for me, then I'm just going to pick the solution that has the least amount of friction in my purchase process. And so that often means something that's self-serve, or that often means something that I can just sign up for online. And so it's something I can have a free trial for. And so if you want to own and control your sales process, you have to be creating value through the sales conversation. You have to sell the demo. You have to sell the time. And the only way you're going to do that is if you're actually going to create value for them at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, as you said, buyers don't need the salesperson for kind of these rote tasks that we used to be able to hold behind the curtain, pricing, product demo, what other people are saying about it. So since that isn't there, it's basically, what value are you adding to the process? What industry insights, what bigger trends are you able to clue me into that fit into this conversation of why I would buy your product or service and what you're going to help me get out of it? I went through this process more than 10 years ago. Before I joined the team here at Sweetfish, Sahil, I was in copier sales for 10 years. It's amazing to me to hear how many people got their start in office equipment. John Barrows talks about his time with Xerox, and there's someone else in the Sales Hacker podcast recently, but I never thought that I would be in sales. I don't know if I'm an introvert or if I'm an ambivert, mix between introvert and extrovert, but I leaned into, hey, I like technology and I can figure this out and I can help my clients figure out how to use it. And that became my differentiation for the better part of a decade in that industry. So exactly what you're talking about, that evolution I witnessed in my own career. So I can tell you that it is absolutely taking place and that shift is definitely happening. So we talked about, this shift from, the sales ninja, the hustler, the snake oil salesman to the technical consultant. And that changes the way that we need to hire and train salespeople, but it also affects the way that sellers need to be thinking about their personal brand. So what is your advice to individual contributors out there right now in where to start? Because I think a lot of people are talking about this idea, but not giving a ton of actionable tactics to folks to what do they do now, right?
Yeah, that's right. And so the reason that we founded Bravado 2 years ago was because I realized something really simple. If you're a salesperson and you're either trying to set or are setting a meeting with a customer, either the day before or 30 minutes before, depending on your preference, you're going to research that person, right? Like that's a critical step that we take, is that we do some research on the person that we're meeting with. And if you type in someone's name into Google, because that's how we search, right? We search on Google. No offense to any pingers. And so if you search on Google for someone's name, what's the first thing that's going to pop up? LinkedIn, right? Inevitably, if I do a search right now for Logan Miles, Sweetfish Media, I bet the first thing that pops up is your LinkedIn profile.
Yep, absolutely.
And so I'm going to click on your LinkedIn profile and do some homework. Well, turns out that buyers do that too. And the main reason I realized that is because I spent 10 years in sales. And then after I left sales, I actually went off into the product side. And when I was building product, I was dealing with a lot of salespeople. I would always research the salesperson. And I started talking to other friends of mine who now were on the product side, and they told me the same thing. They would always research the salespeople that would reach out to them. They would research the companies that were reaching out to them. If they had a meeting with the salesperson, they would definitely do their homework on them to see. And maybe this isn't the nicest way of putting it, but this is like kind of an accurate representation of what most buyers have told me, at least. They do their homework to see if they're talking to a schmuck or not, right? Like, am I talking to someone who's like a serious, like someone who actually has power and influence in this organization? Or am I talking to like some junior SDR, right? So like for them, it's just like a quick vetting thing of like, how senior is this person? But they're doing their homework. And so if you're a salesperson, your professional identity right now is LinkedIn, right? For all of us, right? And for all of us, our professional identities are LinkedIn. Well, what information is a buyer going to see on your LinkedIn profile that's going to help you close the deal? They're going to see where you went to college. Is that going to help you close the deal? They're going to see where your previous jobs were. Is that going to help you close the deal? They're going to see, they're going to see your connections. Is that going to help you close the deal? And our argument was no. Like the thing that we wanted was to get customer feedback, right? Like back to Yelp. Like you do your research on a restaurant. What do you want to see? You want to see that other diners had a great experience at that restaurant. You do your research on Glassdoor on an employer. What do you want to see? You want to see that other candidates and other employees are having a great time working for this company. Well, when you do your research on a salesperson, don't you want to see what their customers have had to say? Don't you want to see what their clients are saying about them? So, that was the principle principle upon which we founded the company was that Bravado was going to help salespeople build their reputation based on customer testimonials. But even outside of that, there's a few very simple steps that I would take in order to build my personal brand. It's clear that LinkedIn is becoming a media platform. And, I see a lot of people posting on LinkedIn who are salespeople. And what I find really interesting is that the majority of content that I see posted by salespeople on LinkedIn is about sales. And that makes no sense to me, right? Because if I, as a salesperson, am going to talk about the cold calls that I'm making or the demos that I'm giving or even how I prospect or whatnot, that's in no way helping a buyer understand why they should do business with me. I would completely change that. As a salesperson today, what I would do is post and publish content all about how I'm serving my customers and about my industry and about, the trends that are impacting my buyers. If I was selling to CMOs of, let's say I'm selling to CMOs of fintech companies, I would post content about fintech, about marketing trends, about, what executives are doing in order to, stay ahead of the curve in 2019 and, all of the things that would be relevant to my buyers. And I know that for some people, it's a little bit nerve-wracking to go out and try to publish content. So I have a pretty simple framework that I give most of the community members here on Bravado. I tell them, look, you can start with curation. Just find really interesting content and read it because it's good for you because you need to do it, right? Because you need to be a consultant and an expert in your industry. So you should be doing this research anyway. And when you find interesting content, just share it on LinkedIn. You don't need to do anything else, just share it. So now you're curating content and you're becoming kind of a hub of information that's relevant to your industry. The next step I would take is to start annotating that content. Now I want you to not just go through and capture the content and post it, but share your comments, right? Put a couple things you learned or something that you think, is interesting from this article. And then eventually you can move into creation where you're actually publishing your own content. So that's probably one thing I would really advise is curate, annotate, and create content on LinkedIn that's relevant to your industry, not about sales, because your buyers don't care about your sales tactics, right? They don't want to hear about that. And the only people who are commenting on your posts are other salespeople, that's how you know you're doing it wrong. Right? If your target persona is commenting on your post, that's how you know you're doing it right. So don't measure yourself based on the number of views you get or the number of likes you get from your peer group. Measure yourself in terms of how many of your customers and your buyers and your prospects are engaging with the content.
Today's growth story is about an enterprise all-flash storage hardware vendor serving 20% of Fortune 100 companies. But here's the issue. They were struggling to engage with prospects across different territories. With a goal of growing their customer base, this hardware vendor decided to work with a partner on high-impact direct mail delivered to over 800 profiled leads across the UK, France, South Africa, Denmark, Sweden, and Finland. This resulted in a 54.4% increase in total contract value. Wow. So who is the partner that delivered these results with direct mail? MRP Prolytics. MRP Prolytics is an insights-powered account-based marketing platform with streaming predictive analytics baked into its core. Integrating multi-channel ABM execution on these insights, MRP Prolytics triggers display, email, direct mail, and global inside sales in real time, helping the largest marketing departments in the world deliver the right message to their customers at just the right time. So could MRP Prolytics work for you too? There's a real good chance it could. Find out by visiting mrpfd.com or click the link in the episode description of this interview. All right, let's get back to the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, if you're, putting out content that's sales related or is maybe, indicative of that old school sales persona, the hustling, the personas that we've talked about as far as, the old school look of a salesperson, one, as you said, Sahil, your buyers aren't going to be interested in that because it doesn't add any value to them. And two, it's going to make you look like that old school salesperson that they don't want to deal with anyway. So not only is it not going to be, a value add, it's actually going to detract from your personal brand and it's going to hurt that potential relationship with prospects. I couldn't agree with you more, man.
Yes, especially, and what you just said there, about like the old school versus new school. I actually see a lot more quote unquote new school sales content being published on LinkedIn these days than I do the old school view. I still do see the old school stuff, and that just, I think, makes all of us cringe. But I do see a lot of like salespeople and sales leaders that I respect publishing content that is still like very new school, right? Like, oh, we need to engage with our buyers. Hey, salespeople, here's the things you need to do to build connections with your buyers. But the audience of those posts are other salespeople. If you are selling to other salespeople, that makes total sense. I completely understand why you're doing that.
Right.
But if you're not selling to other salespeople, which the majority of these folks are not, then all you're doing is wasting your energy and your time in ways that are not going to help you hit your quota. Like, it's not. I know it feels good to be seen as a thought leader and as an influencer in your space. I understand the motivation, but I don't understand the end game, which is that, like, I'm trying to close deals. The way I'm going to close deals is by building trust with my customer. The way I'm going to build trust with my customer is that they're going to see me as someone who's deeply invested in their industry and as someone that's knowledgeable and worth their time. That's the only metric upon which I should be measuring my outreach efforts. See, what most people are getting wrong about social selling. People think of social selling as sending LinkedIn messages or posting or sending DMs on Twitter, right? That's not social selling.
Right.
Social selling is creating content that makes you seem like an influencer in your industry. Salespeople, your industry is not sales. Your industry is the industry of the product that you sell. Your industry is the buyer that you're serving. And so if you work for, I'm just going to pick a random company, but let's say you work for something like Workday, right? If I'm a sales rep at Workday, every piece of content I'm posting has to do in some way with HR, right? If it does not touch HR, recruiting, or something to do with that general world, I'm not posting it on LinkedIn. I'm not using LinkedIn as a way to build my personal brand as someone who knows a lot about sales. I'm using LinkedIn as a way to connect with HR professionals so that they say, oh, wow, Sahil actually knows his stuff. Like, look at all this great content he's posting. He's somebody that I would actually want to do business with. That's social selling. So I just think that we need to reframe and rethink what type of content we're publishing. And I know I'm spending a lot of my effort on LinkedIn, and I do that because that tends to be where the majority of the sales community is. Newsflash, that's not where the majority of your buyers are, right? Like, most HR, unless you're in recruiting, sales, or a VC, you're probably not on LinkedIn all that often, right? Most of your buyers are probably on Facebook, are probably on Twitter, or on other platforms besides LinkedIn. It's mostly just salespeople, recruiters, and VCs that are on LinkedIn. And so you're publishing content and you're getting viewership and you're seeing things on these platforms that are very self-fulfilling. And so think outside the box. Focus on what you can do to connect with your buyer and your ideal customer persona, not connect with fellow salespeople. And I think that would be a big push that I would make to any seller out there. Unless you're selling to sales, in which case that makes sense.
Yeah, if you're selling to sales or you're trying to find your next sales job and you want to be, impressive to sales leaders that are going to look you up on LinkedIn. But you make a great point. Like, whether it's LinkedIn, whatever platform it is, one, think about who you're reaching, and two, is the content relevant for the people that you want to be reaching? Because you can reach a wide audience or you can resonate with the right audience, in my opinion. And I think that's what you're getting at here, Sahil. So I think there is some real wisdom in that. Before we close out, Sahil, any salespeople that you've seen that are really doing this well, of examples that listeners here could look to as forerunners in this space of building their personal brand the right way?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's one of the advantages I get with Bravado is I get to see what thousands and thousands of salespeople are doing on a daily basis, and our platform is designed again to help you build your brand through the voice of your customer. And what I have seen, it's almost an incredible correlation. The top salespeople on Bravado, who are inevitably the top salespeople at their company as well, but the top salespeople on Bravado are the ones who are out there on LinkedIn and posting content that's extremely relevant to their buyer persona. So I would say that Preeti Pinch, Stephanie Elliser, Kevin Walkup, Brian Gerard are all friends of mine Brian Signorelli. We have an incredible cadre of folks who are creating some incredible content and are doing great things. Brian, so I'll pick on Brian for a second. I'm sure he's going to love this. Brian Signorelli is one of the senior salespeople at HubSpot. Has been there for like 7-8 years, and one of their top reps. And Brian posted something the other day talking about how he got automatically unsubscribed from someone's mailing list where he got an email.
I saw that.
Did you see that? Okay, so he basically posted that he was like, this is how you're supposed to market today, and the message was like, hi there, we saw that you haven't been opening our emails for a while, so we've gone ahead and automatically removed you from our mailing list. If it turns out that, you still do want to receive our content, like click here in order to get resubscribed, but otherwise we didn't want to clutter your inbox.
There was a big resubscribe button right in the middle of the email. I loved that.
I loved it too. And you know why I think that's great is because HubSpot's whole brand is inbound marketing, right? HubSpot's whole brand as a company is we are an organization that doesn't want to cold call and cold outreach and be pushy, but we want to focus on customer delight. Brian Halligan, their CEO, in their keynote this year at Inbound talked about how he wanted to make it so that salespeople were not compensated on the deals that they were closing, but were compensated based on renewals. Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more that that's a great way to create better buyer and seller alignment. It doesn't make any sense to me why a salesperson is compensated fully, not to say that they shouldn't be compensated at all, by the way, on the deals that they close, but why the sum total of a salesperson's commission and bonus structure is all centered around the number of deals that they close. Because all that's doing is creating an incentive for a salesperson to sell a crappy deal, because then they win even if the company and the customer loses. Why would you ever create a mechanic like that? You should create win-win-wins where if the salesperson closes a really great deal with a customer who's really excited and a perfect fit, then that deal should be championed financially rewarded in the compensation structure. So if a customer actually turns around and is really excited 3 months, 6 months, 12 months into the deal, that's going to make customer success's job way easier. It's going to make your company's financials way better. It's going to make the customer and you way happier. It's going to build a better brand for you as a company. And so I see a lot of these types of things in sales where like the wrong incentive is out there, so therefore we see the wrong behavior. But back to the point, Brian is doing it right because what he's doing is he's publishing the content that's out there that is directly tied to the brand that his company wants to build and is indirectly reinforcing the message that this is the way that marketing should be done in the future. And that, to me, is exactly the sort of stuff that you should be posting. Because it's funny that I didn't even know that you knew Brian or that you saw this post, but the fact that you and I, two random people in this world, both saw this post and both really liked it, probably means that there's a bunch of other people that saw the post and also liked it, which means that we're now like, wow, Brian posts really interesting stuff that's thought-provoking, that helps us see and reframe the way that we should market. That's exactly how you want to build a brand if you're selling to marketers, which is what he does, right? Like he sells to marketers, so he posts marketing content that's innovative and thoughtful, and that's aligned with the way that his company's product and mission works. So that's the sort of content that I think is perhaps best to put out there.
That's such a good example, man. Shout out to Sig. Keep doing what you're doing, man. This is, I couldn't think of a better example. And I literally saw that post yesterday. So that is fantastic, Sahil. Man, I love everything you're sharing with listeners today. If anybody listening to this wants to stay connected with you, Sahil, what's the best way for them to reach out or go about staying connected with you or find out more about Bravado?
Sure. If anyone listening is interested in joining the Bravado community, you can shoot me either a note on Twitter. I'm just at SV Mansuri. On LinkedIn, you can find me under Sahil Mansuri. You can also find me on my Bravado page, which is just bravado.co/Sahil. And so any of those will be fine ways for someone to get a hold of me. yeah, if anyone's interested in joining the community or learning more about what a modern seller can do in order to build their reputation or their brand, so that they're able to actually get customers excited to talk to them, as opposed to reluctantly and begrudgingly accepting a meeting after the door has been beaten in on them, then I would be happy to have that conversation, as well as discussing how the future of sales is really bright and how we need to get away from pitching products and pricing and the rest of it, and start building real relationships with our customers and redefining what it means to do social selling.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I love that we're closing it out with that emphasis on relationships, man. I couldn't agree more. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Sahil. I really appreciate everything you brought to listeners today. Really appreciate the conversation, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. And we are actually releasing something new. I haven't talked much about this publicly, but we're actually releasing something new pretty soon here on Bravado around a way for you to build your entire sales team and customer success team's reputation with customers. So if anyone's interested in that, shoot me a note, and I'm happy to give someone a sneak peek. So
awesome, man. Appreciate your time, Sahil.
Thanks, man. Cheers. Have a good one, Logan. Bye.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. You know, all those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model. We produce a podcast for your agency. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.